Today, prices for essential items like food and energy continue to rise. We have analysis on the latest CPI and some advice on how to make your money go further. Apple unveiling the latest iPhones and Apple Watch. What's new? And Amazon is planning to hire over 100,000 workers. It's also raising its starting wage. That and much more coming up in NTD Business. Good evening. Great to have you with us. I'm Paul Graney. Prices for essential items like energy, food, and rent are still rising steadily. The latest CPI shows energy was up 2% in August alone and 25% in the past 12 months. Food costs are also rising. A basket including meat and eggs was up 0.7% in August alone. Almost every item on the index increased in price last month, except for transport, waning demand for air travel, the main reason for that, and used cars. Those items helped pull the overall index down to 0.3% for the month. That's a slower pace than the previous 2 months, but annually it was almost as high as July, the highest level since 2008. Prices have been rising steadily since governments and central banks dramatically increased the amount of currency in circulation during the pandemic. Economists often define inflation as more money chasing the same number of goods and services. So I want to talk about energy prices for a while, given it affects all of us, and we've already seen some substantial increases, not to mention the previous month. And joining us to discuss is Don Whaley, a 35-year veteran of the energy industry, now the president of the Texas branch of Ohm Connect. Don, pleasure to have you on the show. Thanks so much for coming. We've seen some big monthly increases already this year. I assume that a lot of it was down to the economy reopening at the time, but from what I've seen, we were pretty much as open in August as we were in July. So why do you think the big increase in prices over the month?
Well, natural gas is still an enormous component of energy generation here in the U.S. And unlike historically, natural gas has now become a global commodity. We used to think of crude oil as something that was traded internationally, but with the emergence of LNG, with the expansion of natural gas production in the U.S., we've turned around the LNG plants, and so it's now a global commodity. And there's a lot of fear of supply shortages as we roll into the winter throughout the world, in Asia and in Europe. And as those economies have opened, it's just put a strain on the supply demand.
You feel people are stockpiling? Is this what they're doing?
I don't know if it's so much stockpiling as hedging their bets against an uncertain winter outcome. Just as you pointed out, we've seen prices really come up. For example, natural gas was under $1.50 in June of last year, and it closed over $5 this month. So that's a fairly substantial increase. And that has to do with the fact that normally in the U.S., we would put gas into underground storage to prepare for winter demand. But instead of going into storage, it's going into LNG production, liquefied natural gas, that we're exporting globally. And I think one of the other complications has been historically LNG facilities operate north of 90%, but there have been operational issues in Asia, Malaysia, to where those numbers are down in the low 80s. And so just the demand in the market, the supply of LNG has just created a supply-demand crunch, and that's driving prices up.
Is there anything Americans can do to kind of, ease these pricing pressures they're seeing?
Well, as I mentioned, the natural gas is a critical component in the generation of electricity. And natural gas units tend to come on in periods of high demand. And so one of the things we do at Ohm Connect is we give our customers the tools to shift their load, if you will. So rather than having everyone turn on all their demand at the same time, we can shift that load to a different part of the day, whether it's just behavioral changes. You don't turn on your washer and dryer at 6 o'clock at night when everybody's coming home and cranking up all their ACs and their high energy consumption appliances. You try to spread your demand throughout the course of the day to where we're putting less strain, less demand on the system. And we're not turning on the higher dollar, the more expensive generation sources, which you do as demand ramps up.
How much do you think somebody could save on average?
Well, we expect our customers here in Texas to save between 10 and 15% off their electric bill annually just by responding to price signals that we'll send out to them and turning down their thermostat, turning off their pool pump, turning off some lights during those periods of high demand and high pricing.
Don Whaley, Ohm Connect. And the new report shows overall sentiment among small business owners it ticked up slightly in August. But it seems like they're losing confidence in future business conditions. It's according to the National Federation of Independent Businesses. The report says small business owners' confidence about business conditions in the 6 months ahead fell to an 8-year low. 50% of small business owners say they can't fill job openings. That's a 48-year high. The most important reason for lower future earnings is rising prices for input costs, including labor. NFIB says the biggest problems facing small business owners is finding enough labor and managing supply chain disruptions. The labor issue has become a worldwide problem. A survey shows 69% of businesses in dozens of countries can't find workers. That's a 15-year high. So joining us to discuss some of the challenges facing small businesses is Dominique Debrew of Anna Maria's Foods in New Jersey, maker of homemade Italian jams and sauces. Dominique, pleasure to have you on the show. We see the CPI, Consumer Price Index, rising for food again very steadily in the last month. Are these rising prices affecting you guys, and are you forced to raise your own prices in response?
Well, up until now, we haven't had to, but as I'm looking at the price of raw materials having gone up and the price of packaging having gone up and also trucking, I don't know that I'm going to be able to keep the same prices for my next productions. I was able to because I had pre-agreed to prices on production and raw materials. My last runs, I was able to keep the same, but my next ones, I may not be.
What kind of price increases are you seeing? Where are the big increases coming from?
Well, actually, the big increases are coming from imported products, from ready-made, such as cheeses, meats, and things like that are mostly being imported from Italy. But we are also seeing an increase in raw materials such as produce. I mean, we had closures and manpower issues on farms and production facilities. So of course, we've had a challenge between the demand and the supply. So all of our raw materials have gone up.
And how has business been for you guys since the beginning of the pandemic and now coming into the past month? I know a lot of people were eating at home. Last year, places were closed. Is this demand, has it continued, do you feel, or has it tapered off a little?
People are still eating home more than they did before the pandemic. I think part of it is that a lot of people don't yet feel comfortable going out into the public arena. They're still, if they're going to restaurants, they're sitting outside or they're taking home. So home cooking is still a big thing, which I think is wonderful because we get to eat sometimes a lot better and less expensive when we're eating at home. I also think that people are wanting to eat healthier. I think this pandemic has kind of shined a spotlight on all of our health, and people are thinking, wow, okay, the things that I plan to do, I think I need to do now.
Dominique Debrew, Anna Maria Foods. So with prices still going up, what can you do to get the most out of your money? NTD's Evelyn Lee talks to an expert negotiator.
So with inflation still running hot, how can you get the most bang out of your buck? Joining me now is expert negotiator Andres Lares. He's a managing partner at Shapiro Negotiations Institute. It's great to see you, Andres.
Thank you very much. Same here.
So tell us, what spendings can you actually negotiate?
Well, you know what? You can really negotiate just about anything. So there's been a lot of attention with inflation and prices rising for things like cars. But certainly that's affecting accommodations, for example. That's definitely negotiable. Furniture. I mean, really just about every large ticket item. And the larger the ticket, larger the price, certainly the more likely it is there's room to negotiate. But even those things that people don't expect to, even hotel rooms are negotiable. So there is a lot to be able to be negotiated there.
Oh, that's really interesting. And sometimes, it's a little bit awkward to go in to negotiate, and there's a little bit of a barrier. So tell us, how can you tell if someone's actually willing to negotiate with you?
For sure. And I think what's interesting about negotiation is that we feel uncomfortable doing it. A lot of us do. And part of that is because we're not necessarily prepared and we're really not sure how the other side's going to react. And to some extent, we can control both of those things, right? And so if we're a little more prepared, so if you're negotiating a car, you're negotiating, if you're going into, even that hotel room, for example, which you might think, wow, can I really negotiate that? Well, looking up a couple of the hotel rooms in the area and finding out they're going for 130 a night. And then if you ask, is there any way that you could do anything on the price that you're saying 150, given the other hotel rooms are 130, that question's, it's a pretty soft ask. And so worst case scenario, they say no.
Right. And so you said do your research. Do you have any other tips and advice?
Well, I think the most efficient or effective way is really to script. So what does that look like? Just write down what you want to say, just the key points, not every line, but just the key points of what you want to say. And what happens is, the real impact is when you're in that moment actually making the ask, it feels like you've already done it before. So your comfort level goes up dramatically because you've essentially had that conversation in your head before. So that's probably the best way to use preparation to your advantage.
And, what are some of the stumbling blocks? Why do you think people have this barrier to negotiating?
So when we did research on this a few years ago, we found the most common reasons that people are concerned and sort of anxious prior to negotiation is, one, they think they might damage the relationship. So they're concerned that's almost being too aggressive. I ask for too much, I damage the relationship. We certainly saw this in salary negotiation. The other side is you just go, just a fear of rejection. No, it's almost like you're damaged rather than them, right? So you take it personally, and so you're wondering, how you recover. That changes the relationship on your end. So those are the two most common. And again, a lot of that by preparation. If you prepare, you're more confident. And so if you're more confident, you're more likely to persuade the other side.
So confidence, what else is important for negotiation and for a successful negotiation?
So confidence is one, and then another one will be empathy. And so I think we don't do enough of this, but empathy, putting yourself in the other person's shoes, is really communication 101, and the same can be said for negotiation. So even you just begin to approach things so differently if prior to negotiating with someone, you put yourself in their shoes. So for example, we were being asked a lot about the Great Resignation and everyone leaving their jobs and how that's done and negotiating to work from home. Well, if you put yourself in the shoes of your boss and think, okay, why wouldn't my boss want me to work from home? Well, it might be because they have a lot of spending in a real estate office, or maybe because they're concerned about the culture, no one comes in. Well, if you think about all of that and then you approach your boss to ask to work from home, it's just a very different feel. It's not about you, it's about both of you and reaching a solution that is collaborative. So that would be the other really big one.
I see. All right. Thank you so much for your advice, Andres.
Thank you very much.
There you go. And Amazon is raising its average starting wage to more than $18 an hour in the United States, at least. It's also planning to hire 125,000 more warehouse and transportation workers. The fatter paycheck shows how big employers are desperate to attract workers in an increasingly tight labor market. Job openings hit a record high at the end of July. Now, Amazon's saying new workers will help run 100 logistics facilities, companies launching across the United States. Some of them will also help to roll out one-day delivery for Prime members. Some other big companies are looking for seasonal workers too. Among the companies posting tens of thousands of positions are the U.S. Postal Service, Kohl's, and Michaels. They say they expect strong holiday sales and they need people. Consulting firm KPMG is expecting Americans to spend 7% more this year. That's based on a recent survey from more than 100 retail executives. But some companies may have trouble securing the talent. Government data says there were a record 11 million job openings during the month of July. And on Wall Street today, stocks fell, giving the S&P 500 its sixth loss in 7 trading days. Lost 26 points, or 0.6%. The Dow fell 292 points, or 0.8%. The Nasdaq dropping 68 points, about 0.5% today. But demand for uranium is pushing prices up there. One Canadian asset manager has bought a new investment trust called In the Element to market as its prices rise to the highest level in 7 years. NTD's Patrick Hayden has more.
Raw uranium prices have risen to their highest level since 2014. One factor driving the price up is a newly launched investment trust, which is banking on rising demand as well as limited supply of the element. The company providing the product is Canadian asset manager Sprott. Raw uranium, known as yellowcake, is the fuel that drives nuclear power stations. With the move away from fossil fuels, nuclear is seen as a reliable source to combine with renewable energy.
It's incredibly important, I guess, in a nutshell. I've not seen a credible analysis of an energy mix that's compatible in the UK, at least with the net zero targets, that doesn't involve nuclear in some way.
The Financial Times reports that since July 19th, Sprott's Physical Uranium Trust has accumulated £6 million of uranium, worth about $240 million. That's helped push up its price a third since then to over $40 per pound. This buying will put pressure on utilities that have to secure supplies so electricity can be generated. And for China, that means it will need to secure enough uranium to run its hugely expanding industry.
The US are developing 2 reactors, France 1, China, I think, 16. So by some way, it's the only country really pushing nuclear at pace.
Sprott's total holding of uranium is now worth around $1 billion. Another uranium investor, Yellowcake plc, holds more than £16 million of the element. Global supply is expected to be around £125 million in 2021, with demand greater at £162 million. The FT reports that by 2030, demand is going to increase by nearly 30%, but supply by 2025 is expected to drop by 15% and then drop by 50% by 2030. That's due to a lack of investment in new mines. Patrick Hayden, NTD News.
And Apple is going to release new iPhone, iPad, and Apple Watch models. They'll have 5G connectivity, faster chips, and sharper cameras.
Today, we are thrilled to introduce our next generation of iPhone.
Apple showcased 4 new iPhone 13 models. They'll use the company's new A15 Bionic chip. CNBC says the most notable improvement is a better battery life. A new iPad mini also features the A15 Bionic chip, plus a new screen design. The lower-cost iPad was also updated. It features a processor update, but gets an A13 chip instead of an A15. Apple also announcing the Apple Watch Series 7. The new model features a rounded screen and makes use of more screen real estate, but Apple didn't give a definite date for its release. Oh, and there's a new iPhone software update to fix a dangerous vulnerability. The update plugs a hole in the iMessage software that allowed hackers to infiltrate a user's phone without the user clicking any links, according to Citizen Lab. It's been in use since February and has been used to deploy Pegasus. That's a spyware made by Israeli firm NSO Group. Officials say it's been used to spy on journalists and human rights activists in multiple countries. The firm said, though, its software is only sold to vetted customers for counterterrorism and law enforcement purposes. Researchers, though, say they've found multiple cases in which the spyware was deployed on dissidents or journalists. And the president's new vaccine mandate is expected to affect about 80 million Americans in the private sector. And by enforcing it may be easier said than done. Businesses and owners are facing some tough choices. NTD's Phil Zoe has the details.
The office phone for employment attorney Kathy Conklin is ringing off the hook.
I think the employers that wanted to impose a vaccine mandate have already done so.
Whether business owners want to enforce a vaccine mandate or not, many are hesitant to do so.
So what are businesses so worried about?
They have a lot of reluctant workers. So they're afraid if they impose the mandate, they will lose droves of needed workers. People who are not vaccinated apparently are a significant percentage of them saying there is nothing that could convince them to get vaccinated. So if there's a vaccine mandate, these people will just quit their jobs. So that's a legitimate concern.
For private companies with 100 or more workers, the other option is to get tested weekly, but that could be costly too.
It is unclear yet whether or not employers are going to be asked to pay for all that testing for the unvaccinated workers. So I think that's another legitimate concern of employers if they're forced to pay those costs.
The Biden administration is asking the Labor Department to enforce the mandate. Companies can also get fined up to $14,000 for each violation if the mandate goes through. Phil Zhou, NTD News.
Today, a federal judge put a restraining order on New York State's vaccine mandate on healthcare workers. Workers didn't get the option for a religious exemption or continued testing. That may now change, at least in New York. And still to come this evening. Taco Bell is testing out a new subscription service for tacos. Find out how it works and which other restaurant is also trying it out. And the largest convention center in the United States gets back to business after its pandemic hiatus. We hear from the event participants and more after this short break.
Secure, the true solution for your digital privacy and security. Secure is a private and secure messaging and email solution hosted in Switzerland, using military-grade encryption and Swiss privacy laws, giving you true privacy. Secure is 100% private and does not collect or sell any of your personal data. Secure's Helix technology connects you securely to our Swiss servers without the need of a VPN, guaranteeing privacy and security for all your communications. Secure Messenger doesn't require your phone number or any personal data that hackers target. Chat by Invites allows you to chat privately and securely with anyone outside of your secure network without the need for others to download Secure. Secure Send offers you a private and secure way to email anyone outside of Secure. You won't find this level of privacy or security on any other email or instant messaging application. Visit secure.com. Regain and protect your privacy today.
What does it mean to devote your life to the truth? Does it mean investigating communist subversion here in America? Does it mean exposing the deadly fentanyl crisis in the Midwest? Or spending late nights and covering deep government corruption? Does it mean persevering over 20 years, even after 4 masked men set one of our printing presses on fire last year? Because at a time when America's traditional values are under attack, it's the responsibility of righteous journalists to uphold truth and tradition.
Welcome back. Forget Taco Tuesdays. How about tacos every day? Taco Bell is now testing a subscription service for tacos. Works a little bit like this. You pay $5 to $10 a month for what's called a Taco Lover's Pass. That gets you a taco each day for 30 days. Might sound odd, but Panera is also trying out subscriptions, including a monthly plan that gives you a free cup of coffee every day. Taco Bell is trying out the subscription service at about 20 of its restaurants in Tucson, Arizona. No word on when it might roll out for the rest of the country. And if you're ready to go nuts, check out the Planters Nutmobile. It's now open for business. The 26-foot-long peanut on wheels is now located on a waterfront property in Minnesota. It costs $3.50 to rent, the same price as a jar of Planters peanuts. But there's only a single booking for a 2-night stay in the giant peanut in early October. The winner will also get a $1,500 travel stipend and, of course, plenty of peanuts to enter. Visit MrPeanutInANutshell.com to enter. And at yesterday's Met Gala, we once again saw flamboyant, outrageous outfits that warranted a second glance. But now let's take a look at the money behind the annual event and what it's actually trying to accomplish. NTD's Don Ma has more.
The Met Gala has returned after being shut down by COVID last year. And as usual, attendees wore colorful, attention-grabbing outfits that fit the theme of American independence. Notable appearances include Kim Kardashian, literally covered in black, Lil Nas X in golden armor, and tennis star Naomi Osaka donning a Japanese-inspired blue and red dress. The annual event is a fundraiser for the Metropolitan Museum of Art's Costume Institute. Today, tickets reportedly cost at least $30,000, whereas in 1960, they were only $100. Then there are the tables, which are normally bought by fashion houses and brands, that start at $200,000, according to the New York Post. Some celebrities are given formal invites, while others are paid by brands to attend.
I am working with Sukaina, and their brand is basically like bright lights, and that's kind of what I wanted to kind of represent.
Stars are frequently seen with their designers who created their outfits. Here, Kim Kardashian is seen with designer Demna Gvasalia. The fundraiser persistently raises 8-figure amounts every year, with 2019 hitting a record $15 million. Don Ma, NTD News.
And business events like conferences and trade shows are carefully returning after a pandemic-induced hiatus. Now many professionals are eager to get back to in-person business. NTD's Andrew Thomas reports.
More than a year later, in-person meetings are making a comeback, but experts say it could be years before these events attract the crowds they did before the pandemic.
When COVID happened, pretty much everything came to a halt in a physical sense. The cost was staggering, and we are still assessing the cost today. And I think our future is very, very bright for business events, but it's going to take some time.
Many countries and companies still have travel restrictions in place, and health concerns remain. Conferences and trade shows went virtual in 2020, but many agree that there's no substitute for in-person meetings.
It's important because we get a chance to network with each other. We find out who has other services other than, what we have, and then we're able to share.
Chicago's McCormick Place is the largest convention center in the U.S. It laid off 90% of its workers last year after over 200 events were canceled.
But I think the most important thing is really, face-to-face business and interaction. That sort of one-on-one interaction is very important for the industry. I think for all of us, it's just people and natural for us to want to have those relationships and build upon them.
Fortunately, events like the Chicago Auto Show, the Black Women's Expo, and Retail X are already returning to McCormick Place. Andrew Thomas, NTD News.
That's the latest business updates for today, but you can still catch NTD Evening News with Stephanie Cox. That's at 6:30 p.m. Eastern. For NTD Business, that's all for today. Thank you for watching. We'll see you tomorrow.
Thanks for watching us on YouTube. Don't forget to catch all of our programs on TV. NTD Evening News is on every weekday at 6:30 p.m. Find your local NTD channel at ntd.com/TV.